But first up, we are going to be reading the Bible, and then we are going to be doing the synopsis, and then we are going to be reading the magician's nephew. I remembered again. I hope you guys enjoy. My dad's going to come up and read Genesis 6.
Hello, good evening. As JJ said, I'm going to be reading Genesis 6 from the English Standard Version. I hope you all enjoyed Genesis 5 yesterday, one of my favorites. But Genesis 6 is also good. So, let me just go ahead and get started. I know in a lot of live streams, like they're going to wait for 30 minutes. But we're... for people to get on board before they get started, but I'm not going to believe in that. All right, so Genesis chapter 6, this is the English Standard Version. Let me begin. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals, and creeping things, and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. So we've had the generations of the heavens and the earth. In chapter 5, we had the generations of Adam. And now in chapter 6, we have the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Or Japheth, if you pronounce it that way. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had been corrupted their way on the earth, or had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons, your wife and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and the animals according to their kinds, and every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. A couple of things to take note here. The mighty men who were of old. Interesting that almost every ancient civilization has some kind of a mighty men or pantheon story. I thought that was interesting. Also, another interesting thing to note is that it does not say every single species. It says the animals according to their kinds. So, do I think that there were two of every kind of, like two wolves, two coyotes, and two dogs, and two, like, no, I think there was one, that's one kind of animal, and that they've branched since then. So, do we have what is known as, if you call it microevolution? Yes, absolutely. Do we have what is sometimes referred to as macroevolution, where one species can turn into another? No, I don't. I really don't think so. So it's laid out right here in Genesis chapter 6. So there we are. That was the English Standard Version. Now we're on to the Magician's Nephew. Hi, Cookie. Cookie number 3 says hi. I guess that means my number 3 fan. Hendrik says keep up what you're doing. Thank you. I'm going to keep doing it as long as I'm able to. We did take a break. We do take breaks from time to time, but we will keep it up. So I do see that there's 29 people on right now. So hello to anybody who's on. I appreciate you. And you're awesome. And you're a light in a dark world. We appreciate you. All right. So we read chapter 6 and 7. And so basically what happened was the Queen Yadis, or the White Witch, as we know, was, she came into our world, and she had like phenomenal power. Like, it was like the power that she had in Charn just paled in comparison to the power that she had in the earth. And she basically went like head to head with all of Earth's leaders, the United States and England and France and all of these world leaders. And she said, I am the leader of all of you. I am more powerful. And they said, no, we resist you. We're not going to be bullied into believing you. And then she spoke the deplorable word, and everybody on Earth died. The end. That's the end of the story. Oh, wait a second. Here comes Kimberly. Here comes Kimberly to say how it really happened.
Hello, everybody. So, what actually happened in the last chapter was they took her to the wood between the worlds, and she got very, very weak. Like, she wasn't able to move, and she could like barely speak very much. And then they took her back to their world mainly because Digory felt a little bit sorry for her and delayed long enough for her to grab him as he jumped through the pond. And once she got into their world, she seemed to not remember being in the wood between the worlds at all. And she ended up immediately being like, what the heck? This wizard is literally just a street magician, basically. And demanded that he give her a cab and take her to, like, somebody important. And he goes over and he gets a hansom cab, which it's a kind of a carriage that they used back then. And Digory waited at the front door for ages and ages and ages for her to come back. And apparently she stole something from a jeweler, I think. And she stole a cab and is standing on the cab driving the horses, while the cabby driver is like, what the heck, why are you stealing my cab? And Digory manages to sneak behind the cab and gets her and brings her back to the wood between the worlds. I think that's about it, right?
No, they weren't in the wood between the worlds yet.
Well, we assume that's where they're going.
Yeah, but they still have another chapter on Earth.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, I think I misremembered then. I'm gonna hand it off to Dad, who's gonna keep reading.
It's only because we've read the story so many times that we get it a little bit confused. This one we've read several times. So I will say that whenever they're doing their British, they're speaking. I was the world's master at the British accents. I could just, every single different nuance of Londonese, I was able to say in the best possible way, just joking. All right, so if you want to make fun of me, then go back to the last video, and that one you can definitely make fun of my attempting to say it with the accents. But the accents are actually written in the story, so I'm trying to do the best I can without having ever been in London. So give me a break. All right, so we're on chapter 8, The Fight at the Lamppost. This is a crucial chapter because there is an iconic structure that is used in this chapter to go to something else. Anyway, I don't want to give it away. If you've never read this before, I don't want to give it away. The Fight at the Lamppost. "Ho, Empress, are you? Well, see about that," said a voice. Then another voice said, "3 cheers for the Empress of Colney Atch," and quite a number joined in. A flush of color came into the witch's face, and she bowed ever so slightly, but the cheers died away into roars of laughter, and she saw that they had only been making fun of her. A change came over her expression, and she changed the knife to her left hand. Then, without warning, she did a thing that was dreadful to see. Lightly, easily, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world, she stretched up her right arm and wrenched off one of the crossbars of the lamppost. If she had lost some magical powers in our world, she had not lost her strength. She could break an iron bar as if it were a stick of barley sugar. She tossed her new weapon up in the air, caught it again, brandished it, and urged the horse forward. "Now's my chance," thought Digory. He darted between the horse and the railings and began going forward. If only the brute would stay still for a moment, he might catch the witch's heel. As he rushed, he heard a sickening crash and a thud. The witch had brought the bar down on the chief policeman's helmet. The man fell like a ninepin. "Quick, Digory, this must be stopped," said a voice beside him. It was Polly, who had rushed down the moment she was allowed out of bed. "You are a brick," said Digory. "Hold on to me tight. You'll have to manage the ring, yellow, remember, and don't put it on till I shout." There was a second crash, and another policeman crumpled up. There came an angry roar from the crowd. "Pull her down! Get a few paving stones! Call out the military!" But most of them were getting as far away as they could. The cabby, however, obviously the bravest, as well as the kindest person present, was keeping close to the horse, dodging this way and that to avoid the bar, but still trying to catch Strawberry's head. The crowd booed and bellowed again. A stone whistled over Digory's head. Then came the voice of the witch, clear like a great bell, and sounding as if for once she was almost happy. "Scum! You shall pay dearly for this when I have conquered your world. Not one stone of your city will be left. I will make it as Charn, as Felinda, as Sorlois, as Bramandin." So apparently she's conquered a lot of worlds. Digory at last caught her ankle. She kicked back with her heel and hit him in the mouth. In his pain, he lost hold. His lip was cut and his mouth full of blood. From somewhere very close by came the voice of Uncle Andrew in a sort of trembling scream. "Madam, my dear young lady, for heaven's sake, compose yourself." Digory made a second grab at her heel and was again shaken off. More men were knocked down by the iron bar. He made a third grab, caught the heel, held on like grim death, shouting to Polly, "Go!" Then, oh, thank goodness, the angry, frightened faces had vanished. The angry, frightened voices were silenced, all except Uncle Andrew's. Close beside Digory in the darkness, it was wailing on. Oh, is this delirium? Is it the end? I can't bear it. It's not fair. I never meant to be a magician. It's all a misunderstanding. It's all my godmother's fault. I must protest against this. In my state of health, too, a very old Dorsetshire family. Brother, thought Diggory. Sorry, bother. Bother, thought Diggory. We didn't want to bring him along. My hat, what a picnic. Are you there, Polly? Yes, I'm here. Don't keep on shoving. I'm not, began Diggory, but before he could say anything more, their heads came out into the warm, green sunshine of the wood. And as they stepped out of the pool, Polly cried out, Oh, look! We've brought the old horse with us, too, and Mr. Ketterly, and the cabby. This is a pretty kettle of fish. As soon as the witch saw that she was once more in the wood, she turned pale and bent down till her face touched the mane of the horse. You could see she felt deadly sick. Uncle Andrew was shivering, but Strawberry, the horse, shook his head, gave a cheerful whinny, and seemed to feel better. He became quiet for the first time since Diggory had seen him. His ears, which had been laid flat back on his skull, came into their proper position, and the fire went out of his eyes. That's right, old boy, said the cabby, slapping Strawberry's neck. That's better. Take it easy. Strawberry did the most natural thing in the world. Being very thirsty, and no wonder, he walked slowly across to the nearest pool and stepped into it to have a drink. Diggory was still holding the witch's heel, and Polly was holding Diggory's hand. One of the cabby's hands was on Strawberry, and Uncle Andrew, still very shaky, had just grabbed on to the cabby's other hand. Quick, said Polly, with a look at Diggory. Greens! So the horse never got his drink. Instead, the whole party found themselves sinking into darkness. Strawberry neighed. Uncle Andrew whimpered. Diggory said, That was a bit of luck. There was a short pause. Then Polly said, Oughtn't we to be nearly there now? We do seem to be somewhere, said Diggory. At least I'm standing on something solid. Why, so am I, now that I come to think of it, said Polly. But why is it so dark? I say, do you think we got into the wrong pool? Perhaps this is Charn, said Diggory, only we've got back in the middle of the night. This is not Charn, came the witch's voice. This is an empty world. This is nothing. And really it was uncommonly like nothing. There were no stars. It was so dark that they couldn't see one another at all, and it made no difference whether you kept your eyes shut or opened. Under their feet there was a cool, flat something which might have been earth and was certainly not grass or wood. The air was cold and dry, and there was no wind. My doom has come upon me, said the witch in a voice of horrible calmness. Oh, don't say that, babbled Uncle Andrew. My dear young lady, pray don't say such things. It can't be as bad as all that. Ah, cabman, my good man, you don't happen to have a flask about you. A drop of spirits is just what I need. Now then, came the cabby's voice. A good, firm, hearty voice. Keep cool, everyone. That's what I say. No bones broken, anyone? Good. Well, there's something to be thankful for straightway, and more than anyone could expect after falling all that way. Now, if we've fallen down some diggings, as it might be for a new station on the underground, someone will come and get us out presently, see? And if we're dead, which I don't deny it might be, well, you got to remember that worse things happen at sea, and a chap's got to die sometime. And there ain't nothing to be afraid of if a chap's led a decent life. And if you ask me, I think the best thing we could do to pass the time would be to sing a hymn. And he did. He struck up at once a harvest Thanksgiving hymn, all about crops being safely gathered in. It was not very suitable to a place which felt as if nothing had ever grown there since the beginning of time, but it was the one he could remember best. He had a fine voice, and the children joined in. It was very cheering. Uncle Andrew and the witch did not join in. Toward the end of the hymn, Diggory felt someone plucking at his elbow, and from a general smell of brandy and cigars and good clothes, he decided that it must be Uncle Andrew. Uncle Andrew was cautiously pulling him away from the others. When they had gone a little distance, the old man put his mouth so close to Diggory's ear that it tickled and whispered, Now, my boy, slip on your ring. Let's be off. But the witch had very good ears. Fool, came her voice, and she leapt off the horse. "Have you forgotten that I can hear men's thoughts? Let go the boy. If you attempt treachery, I will take such vengeance upon you as never was heard of in all worlds from the beginning. And," added Digory, "if you think I'm such a mean pig as to go off and leave Polly and the cabby and the horse in a place like this, you're well mistaken." "You are a very naughty and impertinent little boy," said Uncle Andrew. "Hush!" said the cabby. They all listened. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It was very far away, and Digory found it hard to decide from what direction it was coming. Sometimes it seemed to come from all directions at once. Sometimes he almost thought it was coming out of the earth beneath them. Its lower notes were deep enough to be the voice of the earth itself. There were no words. There was hardly even a tune, but it was, beyond comparison, the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. It was so beautiful he could hardly bear it. The horse seemed to like it, too. He gave the sort of whinny a horse would give off after years of being a cab horse. It found itself back in the old field where it had played as a foal, and saw someone whom it remembered and loved coming across the field to bring it a lump of sugar. "Oh," said the cabby, "ain't it lovely?" Then two wonders happened at the same moment. One was that the voice was suddenly joined by other voices, more voices than you could possibly count. They were in harmony with it, but far higher up the scale, cold, tingling, silvery voices. The second wonder was that the blackness overhead all at once was blazing with stars. They didn't come out gently one by one as they do on a summer evening. One moment there had been nothing but darkness. Next moment 1,000,000 points of light leapt out, single stars, constellations, and planets brighter and bigger than any in our world. There were no clouds. The new stars and the new voices began at exactly the same time. If you had seen and heard it as Digory did, you would have felt quite certain that it was the stars themselves which were singing, and that it was the first voice, the deep one, which had made them appear and made them sing. "Glory be," said the cabby. "I'd have been a better man all my life if I knew there were things like this." The voice on the earth was now louder and more triumphant, but the voices in the sky, after singing loudly with it for a time, began to get fainter, and now something else was happening. Far away and down near the horizon, the sky began to turn gray. A light wind, very fresh, began to stir. The sky in that one place grew slowly and steadily paler. You could see shapes of hills standing up dark against it. All the time the voice went on singing. There was soon light enough for them to see one another's faces. The cabby and the two children had open mouths and shining eyes. They were drinking in the sound, and they looked as if it reminded them of something. Uncle Andrew's mouth was open too, but not open with joy. He looked more as if his chin had simply dropped away from the rest of his face. His shoulders were stooped and his knees shook. He was not liking the voice. If he could have got away from it by creeping into a rat's hole, he would have done so. But the witch looked as if, in a way, she understood the music better than any of them. Her mouth was shut, her lips were pressed together, and her fists were clenched. Ever since the song began, she had felt that this whole world was filled with a magic different from hers and stronger. She hated it. She would have smashed that whole world or all worlds to pieces if it would only stop the singing. The horse stood with its ears well forward and twitching. Every now and then it snorted and stamped the ground. It no longer looked like a tired old cab horse. You could now well believe that its father had been in battles. The eastern sky changed from white to pink, and from pink to gold. The voice rose and rose till all the air was shaking with it, and just as it swelled to the mightiest and most glorious sound it had yet produced, the sun arose. Digory had never seen such a sun. The sun above the ruins of Charn had looked older than ours. This looked younger. You could imagine that it laughed for joy as it came up, and as its beams shot across the land, the travelers could see for the first time what sort of place they were in. It was a valley through which a broad, swift river wound its way, flowing eastward toward the sun. Southward there were mountains, northward there were lower hills, but it was a valley of mere earth, rock, and water. There was not a tree, not a bush, not a blade of grass to be seen. The earth was of many colors. They were fresh, hot, and vivid. They made you feel excited until you saw the singer himself, and then you forgot everything else. It was a lion, huge, shaggy, and bright. It stood facing the risen sun. Its mouth was wide open in song, and it was about 300 yards away. "This is a terrible world," said the witch. "We must fly at once. Prepare the magic." "I quite agree with you, madam," said Uncle Andrew. "A most disagreeable place. Completely uncivilized. If only I were a younger man and had a gun." "Garn," said the cabby. "You don't think you could shoot him, do you?" "And who would?" said Polly. "Prepare the magic, old fool," said Yaddis. "Certainly, madam," said Uncle Andrew cunningly. "I must have both the children touching me. Put on your homeward ring at once, Digory." He wanted to get away without the witch. "Oh, it's rings, is it?" cried Yaddis. She would have had her hands in Digory's pocket before you could say knife, but Digory grabbed Polly and shouted out, "Take care! If either of you come half an inch nearer, we too will vanish and you will be left here for good. Yes, I have a ring in my pocket that will take Polly and me home. And look, my hand is just ready, so keep your distance. I'm sorry about you," he looked at the cabby, "and about the horse, but I can't help that. And as for you two," he looked at Uncle Andrew and the Queen, "you're both magicians, so you ought to enjoy living together." "Hold your noise, everyone," said the cabby. "I want to listen to the music." For the song had now changed. Chapter 9. The Founding of Narnia. The lion was pacing to and fro about the empty land and singing his new song. It was softer and more lilting than the song by which he had called up the stars and the sun, a gentle, rippling music. And as he walked and sang, the valley grew green with grass. It spread out from the lion like a pool. It ran up the sides of the little hills like a wave. In a few minutes, it was creeping up the lower slopes of the distant mountains, making that young world every moment softer. The light wind could now be heard ruffling the grass. Soon there were other things besides grass. The higher slopes grew darker with heather. Patches of rougher and more bristling green appeared in the valley. Digory did not know what they were until one began coming up quite close to him. It was a little spiky thing that threw out dozens of arms and covered those arms with green and grew larger at the rate of about an inch every 2 seconds. There were dozens of these things all around him now. When they were nearly as tall as himself, he saw what they were. "Trees," he exclaimed. The nuisance of it, as Polly said afterward, was that you weren't left in peace to watch it all. Just as Digory said "trees," he had to jump because Uncle Andrew had sidled up to him again and was just going to pick his pocket. It wouldn't have done Uncle Andrew much good if he had succeeded, for he was aiming at the right-hand pocket because he still thought the green rings were homeward rings. But of course Digory didn't want to lose either. "Stop!" cried the witch. "Stand back, no further back. If anyone goes within 10 paces of either of the children, I will knock out his brains." She was poising in her hand the iron bar that she had torn off the lamppost, ready to throw it. Somehow no one doubted that she would be a very good shot. "So," she said, "you would steal back to your own world with the boy and leave me here." Uncle Andrew's temper at last got the better of his fears. "Yes, ma'am, I would," he said. "Most undoubtedly I would. I should be perfectly in my rights." I have been most shamefully, most abominably treated. I have done my best to show you such civilities as were in my power. And what has been my reward? You have robbed, I must repeat the word, robbed a highly respectable jeweler. You have insisted on my entertaining you to an exceedingly expensive, not to say ostentatious lunch, though I was obliged to pawn my watch and chain in order to do so. And let me tell you, ma'am, that none of our family have been in the habit of frequenting pawn shops, except my cousin Edward, and he was in the yeomanry. I don't know what that is. During that indigestible meal, I'm feeling the worse for it at this very moment. Your behavior and conversation attracted the unfavorable attention of everyone present. I feel I have been publicly disgraced. I shall never be able to show my face in that restaurant again. You have assaulted the police. You have stolen. Oh, stow it, governor, do stow it, said the cabby. Watching and listening's the thing at this present, not talking. There was certainly plenty to watch and listen to. The tree which Digory had noticed was now a full-grown beech, whose branches swayed gently above his head. They stood on cool green grass sprinkled with daisies and buttercups. A little way off, along the river bank, willows were growing. On the other side, tangles of flowering currant, lilac, wild rose, and rhododendron closed them in. The horse was tearing up delicious mouthfuls of new grass. All this time the lion's song and his stately prowl to and fro, backward and forward, was going on. What was rather alarming was that at each turn he came a little nearer. Polly was finding the song more and more interesting because she thought she was beginning to see the connection between the music and the things that were happening. When a line of dark firs sprang up on a ridge about 100 yards away, she felt that they were connected with a series of deep, prolonged notes which the lion had sung a second before. And when he burst into a rapid series of lighter notes, she was not surprised to see primroses suddenly appearing in every direction. Thus, with an unspeakable thrill, she felt quite certain that all things were coming, as she said, out of the lion's head. When you listened to his song, you heard the things he was making up. When you look around you, you saw them. This was so exciting that she had no time to be afraid, but Digory and the cabby could not help feeling a bit nervous as each turn of the lion's walk brought him nearer. As for Uncle Andrew, his teeth were chattering, but his knees were shaking so that he could not run away. Suddenly, the witch stepped boldly out toward the lion. It was coming on, always singing with a slow, heavy pace. It was only 12 yards away. She raised her arm and flung the iron bar straight at its head. Nobody, least of all Yadis, could have missed at that range. The bar struck the lion fair between the eyes. It glanced off and fell with a thud in the grass. The lion came on. Its walk was neither slower nor faster than before. You could not tell whether it even knew it had been hit. Though its soft pads made no noise, you could feel the earth shake beneath their weight. The witch shrieked and ran. In a few moments, she was out of sight among the trees. Uncle Andrew turned to do likewise, tripped over a root, and fell flat on his face in a little brook that ran down to join the river. The children could not move. They were not even quite sure that they wanted to. The lion had paid no attention to them. Its huge red mouth was open, but open in song, not in snarl. It passed by them so close that they could have touched its mane. They were terribly afraid it would turn and look at them, yet in some queer way they wished it would. For all the notice it took of them, they might just as well have been invisible and unsmellable. When it had passed them and gone a few paces further, it turned, passed them again, and continued its march eastward. Uncle Andrew, coughing and spluttering, picked himself up. "Now, Digory," he said, "we've got rid of that woman, and that brute of a lion is gone. Give me your hand and put on your ring at once." "Keep off," said Digory, backing away from him. "Keep clear of him, Polly. Come over here beside me. Now, I warn you, Uncle Andrew, don't come one step nearer. We'll just vanish." Do what you're told this minute, said Uncle Andrew. You're an extremely disobedient, ill-behaved little boy. No fear, said Digory. We want to stay and see what happens. I thought you wanted to know about other worlds. Don't you like it now that you're here? Like it, exclaimed Uncle Andrew. Just look at the state I'm in. And it was my best coat and waistcoat, too. He certainly was a dreadful sight by now, for of course, the more dressed up you were to begin with, the worse you looked after you've crawled out of a smashed hansom cab and fallen into a muddy brook. I'm not saying, he added, that this is not a most interesting place. If I were a younger man now, perhaps I could get some lively young fellow to come here first. One of those big game hunters. Something might be made of this country. The climate is delightful. I never felt such air. I believe it would have done me good if circumstances had been more favorable. If only we had a gun. Guns be blowed, said the cabby. I think I'll go and see if I can give Strawberry a rub down. That horse has more sense than some humans as I could mention. He walked back to Strawberry and began making the hissing noises that grooms make. Do you still think that lion could be killed by a gun? Said Digory. He didn't mind the iron bar much. With all her faults, said Uncle Andrew, that's a plucky gel, my boy. It was a spirited thing to do. He rubbed his hands and cracked his knuckles as if he were once more forgetting how the witch frightened him whenever she was really there. It was a wicked thing to do, said Polly. What harm had he done her? Hello, what's that? Said Digory. He had darted forward to examine something only a few yards away. I say, Polly, he said, he called back, do come and look. Uncle Andrew came with her, not because he wanted to see, but because he wanted to keep close to the children. There might be a chance of stealing their rings. But when he saw what Digory was looking at, even he began to take an interest. It was a perfect little model of a lamppost, about 3 feet high, but lengthening and thickening in proportion as they watched it. In fact, growing just as the trees had grown. It's alive, too. I mean, it's lit, said Digory. It's lit, said Digory. And so it was, though of course the brightness of the sun made the little flame in the lantern hard to see unless your shadow fell on it. Remarkable, most remarkable, muttered Uncle Andrew. Even I never dreamed of magic like this. We're in a world where everything, even a lamppost, comes to life and grows. Now I wonder what sort of seed a lamppost grows from. Don't you see, said Digory, this is where the bar fell. The bar she tore off the lamppost at home. It sank into the ground, and now it's coming up as a young lamppost. But not so very young now. It was as tall as Digory while he said this. That's it! Stupendous! Stupendous! Said Uncle Andrew, rubbing his hands harder than ever. Ho, ho! They laughed at my magic. That fool of a sister of mine thinks I'm a lunatic. I wonder what they'll say now. I have discovered a world where everything is bursting with life and growth. Columbus now, they talk about Columbus, but what was America to this? The commercial possibilities of this country are unbounded. Bring a few old bits of scrap iron down here, bury 'em, and up they come as brand new railway engines, battleships, anything you please. They'll cost nothing, and I can sell 'em at full prices in England. I shall be a millionaire. And then the climate. I feel years younger already. I can run it as a health resort. A good sanatorium here might be worth $20,000 a year. Of course, I shall have to let a few people into the secret. The first thing is to get that brute shot. You're just like the witch, said Polly. All you think of is killing things. And then, as regrets oneself, Uncle Andrew continued, in a happy dream, there's no knowing how long I might live if I settled here, and that's a big consideration when a fellow has turned 60. I shouldn't be surprised if I never grew a day older in this country. Stupendous! The land of youth! Oh, cried Digory, the land of youth. Do you think it really is? For of course he remembered what Aunt Letty had said to the lady who brought the grapes, and that sweet hope rushed back upon him. Uncle Andrew, he said, do you think there's anything here that would cure Mother? What are you talking about? Said Uncle Andrew. This isn't a chemist's shop, but I was saying, You don't care 2 pence about her, said Digory savagely. I thought you might, after all. She's your sister as well as my mother. Well, no matter. I'm jolly well going to ask the lion himself if he can help me. And he turned and walked briskly away. Polly waited for a moment and then went after him. Here, stop, come back. The boy's gone mad, said Uncle Andrew. He followed the children at a cautious distance behind, for he didn't want to get too far away from the green rings or too near to the lion. In a few minutes, Digory came to the edge of the wood, and there he stopped. The lion was singing still, but now the song had once more changed. It was more like what we should call a tune, but it was also far, far wilder. It made you want to run and jump and climb. It made you want to shout. It made you want to rush at other people and either hug them or fight them. It made Digory hot and red in the face. It had some effect on Uncle Andrew, for Digory could hear him saying, "A spirited jest, sir. It's a pity about her temper, but a fine woman all the same, a fine woman." But what the song did to the two humans was nothing compared to what it was doing to the country. Can you imagine a stretch of grassy land bulbing like water in a pot? For that is really the best description of what was happening. In all directions it was swelling into humps. They were of a very different sizes, some no bigger than molehills, some as big as wheelbarrows, two the size of cottages, and the humps moved and swelled till they burst, and the crumpled earth poured out of them, and from each hump there came out an animal. The moles came out just as you might see a mole come out in England. The dogs came out barking the moment their heads were free, and struggling as you've seen them do when they are getting through a narrow hole in the hedge. The stags were the queerest to watch, for of course the antlers came up in a long time before the rest of them, so at first Digory thought they were trees. The frogs, who all came up near the river, went straight into it with a plop plop and the loud croaking. The panthers, leopards, and things of that sort sat down at once to wash the loose earth off their hindquarters, and then stood up against the trees to sharpen their front claws. Showers of birds came out of the trees. Butterflies fluttered. Bees got to work on the flowers as if they hadn't a second to lose. But the greatest moment of all was when the biggest hump broke like a small earthquake, and out came the sloping back, the large wise head, and the 4 baggy trousered legs of an elephant. And now you could hardly hear the song of the lion. There was so much cawing, cooing, crowing, braying, neighing, baying, barking, lowing, bleating, and trumpeting. But though Digory could no longer hear the lion, he could see it. It was so big and so bright that he could not take his eyes off it. The other animals did not appear to be afraid of it. Indeed, at that very moment, Digory heard the sound of hoofs from behind. A second later, the old cab horse trotted past him and joined the other beasts. The air had apparently suited him as well as it had suited Uncle Andrew. He no longer looked like the poor old slave he had been in London. He was picking up his feet and holding his head erect. And now, for the first time, the lion was quite silent. He was going to and fro among the animals, and every now and then he would go up to 2 of them, always 2 at a time, and touch their noses with his. He would touch 2 beavers among all the beavers, 2 leopards among all the leopards, 1 stag and 1 deer among all the deer, and leave the rest. Some sorts of animals he passed over altogether, but the pairs which he had touched instantly left their own kinds and followed him. At last he stood still, and all the creatures whom he had touched came and stood in a wide circle around him. The others whom he had not touched began to wander away. Their noises faded gradually into the distance. The chosen beasts who remained were now utterly silent, all with their eyes fixed intently upon the lion. The cat-like ones gave an occasional twitch of their tail, but otherwise all were still. For the first time that day there was complete silence, except for the noise of running water. Digory's heart beat wildly. He knew something very solemn was going to be done. He had not forgotten about his mother, but he knew jolly well that even for her, he couldn't interrupt a thing like this. The lion, whose eyes never blinked, stared at the animals as hard as if he was going to burn them with his mere stare, and gradually a change came over them. The smaller ones, the rabbits, moles, and such like, grew a good deal larger. The very big ones, you noticed it most with the elephants, grew a little smaller. Many animals sat up on their hind legs. Most put their heads on one side as if they were trying very hard to understand. The lion opened his mouth, but no sound came from it. He was breathing out a long, warm breath. It seemed to sway all the beasts as the wind sways a line of trees. Far overhead, from beyond the veil of blue sky which hid them, the stars sang again a pure, cold, difficult music. Then there came a swift flash like fire, but it burnt nobody, either from the sky or from the lion itself, and every drop of blood tingled in the children's bodies, and the deepest, wildest voice they had ever heard was saying, "Narnia, Narnia, Narnia, awake! Love, think, speak, be walking trees, be talking beasts, be divine waters." And that's the end of chapter 9. We're going to stop there. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat just now. I do not necessarily have the best Aslan voice, so I apologize for that. But we will pick up next time with chapter 10, the first joke and other matters, and the first word is it. So if you want to find out what happens in this new created world, then you have to come back to us next time. And we're looking forward to seeing you there. And thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time. God bless.